Start. MTC. Unit 14, 2, No Analysis. The last 2 decades of research on the science of learning have shown conclusively that we remember things better, and longer, if we discover them ourselves rather than being told them. 2.0. This is the teaching method practiced by physics professor Eric Mazur. Eric Mazur. He doesn't lecture in his classes at Harvard. Instead, he asks students difficult questions, based on their homework reading, that require them to pull together sources of information to solve a problem. Mazur doesn't give them the answer, instead, he asks the students to break off into small groups and discuss the problem among themselves. Mazur. Eventually, nearly everyone in the class gets the answer right, and the concepts stick with them because they had to find their own way to the answer. MTC. Good job. Let's start. MTC. Unit 14, 2, No 01. Many evolutionary biologists argue that humans developed language for economic reason. We needed to trade, and we needed to establish trust in order to trade. Language is very handy when you are trying to conduct business with someone. 2 early humans could not only agree to trade 3 wooden bowls for 6 bunches of bananas but establish rules as well. 3.6. What wood was used for the bowls? Where did you get the bananas? That business deal would have been nearly impossible using only gestures and confusing noises, and carrying it out according to terms agreed upon creates a bond of trust. Language allows us to be specific, and this is where conversation plays a key role. MTC. Good job. Let's start. MTC. Unit 14, 2, No 02. It is common to assume that creativity concerns primarily the relation between actor, creator, and artifact, creation. However, from a socio-cultural standpoint, the creative act is never complete in the absence of a second position, that of an audience. 2. While the actor or creator him/herself is the first audience of the artifact being produced, this kind of distanciation can only be achieved by internalizing the perspective of others on one's work. This means that, in order to be an audience to your own creation, a history of interaction with others is needed. We exist in a social world that constantly confronts us with the view of the other. It is the view we include and blend into our own activity, including creative activity. This outside perspective is essential for creativity because it gives new meaning and value to the creative act and its product. MTC. Good job. Let's start. MTC. Unit 14, 2, No 03. Scientists believe that the frog's ancestors were water-dwelling, fish-like animals. The first frogs and their relatives gained the ability to come out on land and enjoy the opportunities for food and shelter there. But they still kept many ties to the water. A frog's lungs do not work very well, and it gets part of its oxygen by breathing through its skin. But for this kind of breathing to work properly, the frog's skin must stay moist. And so the frog must remain near the water where it can take a dip every now and then to keep from drying out. Frogs must also lay their eggs in water, as their fish-like ancestors did. And eggs laid in the water must develop into water creatures, if they are to survive. For frogs, metamorphosis thus provides the bridge between the water-dwelling young forms and the land-dwelling adults. MTC. Good job. Let's start. MTC. Unit 14, 2, No 04. Back in 1996, an American airline was faced with an interesting problem. 1996. At a time when most other airlines were losing money or going under, over 100 cities were begging the company to service their locations. 100. However, that's not the interesting part. What's interesting is that the company turned down over 95% of those offers and began serving only 4 new locations. 95. It turned down tremendous growth because company leadership had set an upper limit for growth. Sure, its executives wanted to grow each year, but they didn't want to grow too much. Unlike other famous companies, they wanted to set their own pace, one that could be sustained in the long term. By doing this, they established a safety margin for growth that helped them continue to thrive at a time when the other airlines were flailing. MTC. Good job. Let's start. MTC. Unit 14, 2, No 05. We're often told that newborns and infants are comforted by rocking because this motion is similar to what they experienced in the womb, and that they must take comfort in this familiar feeling. This may be true, however, to date there are no convincing data that demonstrate a significant relationship between the amount of time a mother moves during pregnancy and her newborn's response to rocking. Just as likely is the idea that newborns come to associate gentle rocking with being fed. Parents understand that rocking quiets a newborn, and they very often provide gentle, repetitive movement during feeding. Since the appearance of food is a primary reinforcer, newborns may acquire a fondness for motion because they have been conditioned through a process of associative learning. MTC. Good job. Let's start. MTC. Unit 14, 2, No 06. One of the main reasons that students may think they know the material, even when they don't, is that they mistake familiarity for understanding. Here is how it works: you read the chapter once, perhaps highlighting as you go. Then later, you read the chapter again, perhaps focusing on the highlighted material. As you read it over, the material is familiar because you remember it from before, and this familiarity might lead you to think, okay, I know that. The problem is that this feeling of familiarity is not necessarily equivalent to knowing the material and may be of no help when you have to come up with an answer on the exam. In fact, familiarity can often lead to errors on multiple choice exams because you might pick a choice that looks familiar, only to find later that it was something you had read, but it wasn't really the best answer to the question. MTC. Good job. Let's start. MTC. Unit 14, 2, No 07. Say you normally go to a park to walk or work out. Maybe today you should choose a different park. Why? Well, who knows? Maybe it's because you need the connection to the different energy in the other park. Maybe you'll run into people there that you've never met before. You could make a new best friend simply by visiting a different park. You never know what great things will happen to you until you step outside the zone where you feel comfortable. If you're staying in your comfort zone and you're not pushing yourself past that same old energy, then you're not going to move forward on your path. By forcing yourself to do something different, you're awakening yourself on a spiritual level and you're forcing yourself to do something that will benefit you in the long run. As they say, variety is the spice of life. MTC. Good job. Let's start. MTC. Unit 14, 2, No 08. Focusing on the differences among societies conceals a deeper reality. Their similarities are greater and more profound than their dissimilarities. Imagine studying two hills while standing on a 10,000-foot-high plateau. Seen from your perspective, one hill appears to be 300 feet high, and the other appears to be 900 feet. 300900. This difference may seem large, and you might focus your attention on what local forces, such as erosion, account for the difference in size. But this narrow perspective misses the opportunity to study the other, more significant geological forces that created what are actually two very similar mountains, one 10,300 feet high and the other 10,900 feet. 10,300 10,900. And when it comes to human societies, people have been standing on a 10,000-foot plateau, letting the differences among societies mask the more overwhelming similarities. MTC. Good job. Let's start. MTC. Unit 14, 2, No 09. There is a famous Spanish proverb that says, "The belly rules the mind." This is a clinically proven fact. Food is the original mind-controlling drug. Every time we eat, we bombard our brains with a feast of chemicals, triggering an explosive hormonal chain reaction that directly influences the way we think. Countless studies have shown that the positive emotional state induced by a good meal enhances our receptiveness to be persuaded. It triggers an instinctive desire to repay the provider. This is why executives regularly combine business meetings with meals, why lobbyists invite politicians to attend receptions, lunches, and dinners, and why major state occasions almost always involve an impressive banquet. Churchill called this dining diplomacy, and sociologists have confirmed that this principle is a strong motivator across all human cultures. Churchill. MTC. Good job. Let's start. MTC. Unit 14, 2, Number 10. Vision is like shooting at a moving target. Plenty of things can go wrong in the future and plenty more can change in unpredictable ways. When such things happen, you should be prepared to make your vision conform to the new reality. For example, a businessman's optimistic forecast can be blown away by a cruel recession or by aggressive competition in ways he could not have foreseen. Or in another scenario, his sales can skyrocket and his numbers can get even better. In any event, he will be foolish to stick to his old vision in the face of new data. There is nothing wrong in modifying your vision or even abandoning it, as necessary. MTC. Good job. Let's start. MTC. Unit 14, 2, Number 11. We are more likely to eat in a restaurant if we know that it is usually busy. Even when nobody tells us a restaurant is good, our herd behavior determines our decision-making. Let's suppose you walk toward two empty restaurants. You do not know which one to enter. However, you suddenly see a group of 6 people enter one of them. Which one are you more likely to enter, the empty one or the other one? Most people would go into the restaurant with people in it. Let's suppose you and a friend go into that restaurant. Now, it has 8 people in it. Others see that one restaurant is empty and the other has 8 people in it. So, they decide to do the same as the other 8. MTC. Good job. Let's start. MTC. Unit 14, 2, Number 12. Most of us are suspicious of rapid cognition. We believe that the quality of the decision is directly related to the time and effort that went into making it. That's what we tell our children: haste makes waste. Look before you leap. Stop and think. Don't judge a book by its cover. Dot. 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 We believe that we are always better off gathering as much information as possible and spending as much time as possible in careful consideration. But there are moments, particularly in time-driven, critical situations, when haste does not make waste, when our snap judgments and first impressions can offer better means of making sense of the world. Survivors have somehow learned this lesson and have developed and sharpened their skill of rapid cognition. MTC. Good job. Let's start. MTC. Unit 14, 2, Number 13. All mammals need to leave their parents and set up on their own at some point. But human adults generally provide a comfortable existence. Enough food arrives on the table, money is given at regular intervals, the bills get paid and the electricity for the TV doesn't usually run out. TV. If teenagers didn't build up a fairly major disrespect for and conflict with their parents or carers, they'd never want to leave. In fact, falling out of love with the adults who look after you is probably a necessary part of growing up. Later, when you live independently, away from them, you can start to love them again because you won't need to be fighting to get away from them. And you can come back sometimes for a home-cooked meal. MTC. Good job. Let's start. MTC. Unit 14, 2, Number 14. It is difficult to know how to determine whether one culture is better than another. What is the cultural rank order of rock, jazz, and classical music? When it comes to public opinion polls about whether cultural changes are for the better or the worse, looking forward would lead to one answer and looking backward would lead to a very different answer. Our children would be horrified if they were told they had to go back to the culture of their grandparents. Our parents would be horrified if they were told they had to participate in the culture of their grandchildren. Humans tend to like what they have grown up in and gotten used to. After a certain age, anxieties arise when sudden cultural changes are coming. Our culture is part of who we are and where we stand, and we don't like to think that who we are and where we stand are short-lived. MTC. Good job. Let's start. MTC. Unit 14, 2, number 15. From an economic perspective, a short-lived event can become an innovative event if it generates goods and services that can be sold to people, in particular to those from outside the locality. The remarkable growth of art exhibitions, cultural festivals, and sports competitions, for example, can be analyzed in this light. They are temporary activities that can attract large numbers of outsiders to a locality, bringing in new sources of income. But even here, there is a two-way interaction between the event and the context. The existence of an infrastructure, a reputation, a history of an activity for an area may have important effects on the economic success or failure of an event. In other words, events do not take place in a vacuum. They depend on an existing context which has been in the making for a long time. The short-lived event, therefore, would be performed in relation to this long-term context. MTC. Good job. Let's start. MTC. Unit 14, 2, number 16. Interestingly, in nature, the more powerful species have a narrower field of vision. The distinction between predator and prey offers a clarifying example of this. The key feature that distinguishes predator species from prey species isn't the presence of claws or any other feature related to biological weaponry. The key feature is the position of their eyes. Predators evolved with eyes facing forward, which allows for binocular vision that offers accurate depth perception when pursuing prey. Prey, on the other hand, often have eyes facing outward, maximizing peripheral vision, which allows the hunted to detect danger that may be approaching from any angle. Consistent with our place at the top of the food chain, humans have eyes that face forward. We have the ability to gauge depth and pursue our goals, but we can also miss important action on our periphery. MTC. Good job.